Welcome back, everyone, to the Deep Dive. You know how much we love diving into really specific topics? And today we're focusing on something that I think is so important for anyone who wants to take their English to the next level, and that's really boosting your daily communication, those everyday interactions where you want to sound more natural and confident. We've got a fantastic collection of materials today that go beyond those basic phrases and really get into some practical advanced stuff, specifically designed for English language learners who are ready to sound more, well, like they belong in the conversation.
Yeah, and we're talking about all kinds of situations here. We're looking at how to kick off a conversation, the subtle art of small talk, navigating the workplace, getting around when you travel, socializing, even those sometimes tricky moments where things don't quite go to plan, and doing it all with a smoother, more natural feel. So much of this comes down to the actual phrases we use, which is what we'll be dissecting today.
It's kind of like having a shortcut to sounding more like a native speaker, right? We're going to be pulling out those key phrases and ideas from a bunch of different resources today.
Yeah.
And our mission, plain and simple, is to give you some really specific, more advanced English phrases that you can start using right away to make your interactions flow better and to help you sound less like you're reciting lines from a textbook and more like you're genuinely connecting with people.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so let's jump right in. I think a great place to start is something we all do every day, and that's starting conversations and those little back and forth dances of small talk.
Yeah. It's really interesting to think about how even tiny tweaks to the way we say things can really shift how our message is received. Take something as basic as "how are you," for instance.
Right.
Perfectly acceptable, of course.
Right.
But the resources we're looking at today offer some really cool alternatives that can create a bit of a different vibe, a different opening,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, totally.
So instead of the standard "how are you," you could try something a little more personal, a bit warmer, like "how's life treating you?"
Yeah, I like that. How's life treating you? It feels a little bit more like you're asking beyond just how they're feeling in that moment.
Right.
It's almost like you're genuinely curious about their overall experience.
Exactly. And it kind of invites them to share a little bit more,
It does, doesn't it?
instead of a one-word answer.
Yeah.
And then there's "what's new with you?" I really like this one.
Yeah.
It almost explicitly asks them to share something they've been up to, something they've been experiencing.
It's like a nice little invitation to tell you about something they're thinking about. And I also love anything exciting happening lately,
Oh, that's a good one.
which really encourages them to bring up something interesting,
Yeah,
especially if, they've got something exciting going on.
exactly. And I think what's important here is that it's not just about, fulfilling some kind of social requirement, but it's actually showing that you're genuinely interested in what the other person has to say.
Okay.
It moves away from that predictable "hi, how are you, I'm fine" kind of exchange. And that same idea really applies to how you respond when someone asks you a similar question.
Oh, absolutely. I think we've all had that moment where we're just like, I'm fine, and it just kind of shuts the conversation down.
Right.
The resources we're looking at today actually have some really cool suggestions for adding a little something extra to your response.
Yeah.
So instead of just, I'm fine, you could say, can't complain, how about you?
Yeah.
Which is always a winner.
That's a classic.
It's casual, it's polite, it keeps things moving.
Absolutely. And it sort of implicitly acknowledges that, yeah, life has its ups and downs, but you're managing,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
You're not dwelling on the negative. And then there's "I've been keeping busy," which I find myself using quite a bit.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a great way to acknowledge the question, but not necessarily get into specifics,
I was like, yeah, things are happening, but you don't have to list them all out.
Exactly, exactly.
I also really like same old, same old.
Oh, yeah.
It's just so relatable and simple.
It is. It kind of creates a sense of shared understanding, like, yeah, we're all just kind of going through the motions here, but it's all good.
We're in this together.
Right.
So, listeners, as we're talking about these different ways of starting conversations and engaging in small talk, which of these slightly more nuanced phrases do you think you could easily weave into your own everyday interactions?
Yeah, give it some thought. It's really amazing how a few simple tweaks can make a big difference in how you come across.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the world of work. How we communicate in a professional setting is super important.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And our resources today have some really practical phrases for navigating those sometimes tricky waters of meetings, delegating tasks, and just generally making your interactions with colleagues smoother.
For sure. I mean, think about being in a meeting, for example.
Mm.
Being able to express your opinion in a way that's both clear and considerate can make all the difference.
For sure.
Instead of just coming out and stating your view directly, you could try softening it a bit with a phrase like, if you ask me, I think we should.
I like that. If you ask me, it's gentle.
Yeah,
It kind of invites others to contribute their thoughts as well. It's not like you're just laying down the law.
precisely. It's a subtle way of saying, this is my perspective, but I'm open to hearing yours too.
Yeah, it's a much more collaborative approach. And then there's the classic, just to play devil's advocate.
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a fantastic way to introduce a counterpoint or challenge an idea without sounding like you're just being disagreeable.
It's a great way to stimulate discussion and get people thinking more deeply about the topic.
Yeah. And it also shows that you're thinking critically, right? You're considering different angles and potential challenges.
Exactly. It signals that you're being thorough and not just accepting things at face value. And finally, we have from where I stand. This is a really useful way to preface your own personal viewpoint, especially when you know there might be other perspectives based on different experiences or roles within the company.
It's like you're acknowledging that your view is just one piece of the puzzle and you're open to hearing how others see it.
Exactly.
Okay, so now let's talk about getting things done at work. Sometimes you need to delegate tasks or make requests of your colleagues. What are some of the more polite ways to do that?
Well, instead of just giving a direct command, which can sometimes come across as a bit bossy, you could try something like, could you give me a hand with this?
Yeah.
It really frames the request as a collaboration, which can be much more well received.
Yeah, it's much softer, less demanding. And it implies that you value their input and their help.
Absolutely. And along similar lines, there's the classic, would you mind taking care of this?
Yeah,
A very polite and commonly used way to delegate a task without sounding too authoritarian.
definitely. And I really like this one for scheduling a follow-up. Let's touch base later.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Much more natural than saying something like, we need to schedule a subsequent meeting to discuss this further.
Right.
It's just so much more efficient and relaxed.
Concise and to the point, and it clearly indicates a future action. And of course, there's the classic expression of trust and delegation. I'll leave it in your capable hands.
Oh, yeah.
It not only delegates the responsibility, but also conveys confidence in the other person's ability to handle it.
It's like a little vote of confidence. So as we're going through these different phrases for sharing your thoughts and asking for help at work, which ones resonate with you the most? Which ones do you think you could start using to make your communication more effective?
Yeah, I think that's a great question for our listeners to consider. How can you adapt these phrases to your own workplace dynamics and communication style?
All right, so let's move on to something a little more fun, shall we? Let's talk about social situations.
Okay.
Hanging out with friends, making plans. Our resources have some great informal ways to suggest getting together. This is where things can be a bit more relaxed and casual.
Right. Instead of a very formal invitation, you can use phrases like, hey, are you up for a coffee later?
Yeah.
It's casual, open-ended, doesn't put too much pressure on the other person to commit.
It's just a nice, easy way to see if they're free. And of course, if you're thinking about food, want to grab a bite is a super common and friendly way to suggest a meal together.
Absolutely.
And for making more general plans, without a specific time in mind, let's catch up soon, is perfect for leaving things a bit more open.
Yeah, it leaves things flexible, which is often what you want in social situations. It's like you're expressing a desire to connect without being too demanding. But of course, sometimes those plans need to change.
Right.
And knowing how to cancel politely is a really important social skill. No one wants to be that person who cancels at the last minute without a good reason.
Totally. And nobody wants to seem inconsiderate.
Right.
Our sources give us a few good options for canceling gracefully. There's the classic, something came up, can we reschedule?
Yeah, that's a good one.
It explains that you can't make it, while also suggesting that you still want to connect.
Right. It shows that you still value the plan and are hoping to find an alternative time. And then there's the more informal, I'm going to have to take a rain check,
Yeah.
which is a very common idiom that means you need to postpone, usually without a specific new date in mind, but with the understanding that you'll try to make it up to them in the future. For some listeners, understanding that rain check actually comes from the idea of outdoor events being postponed due to, well, rain might add a little bit of context to that phrase.
Yeah, it's an interesting little piece of language history. And then there's just the simple, sorry, I'm tied up today.
Right.
a very clear and concise way to explain that you're busy without needing to go into a lot of detail.
Exactly. Though it's usually good form to follow up with a suggestion to reschedule.
Absolutely. It shows that you're not just blowing them off.
Right. You're still invested in getting together.
So listeners, think about your own social interaction.
Yeah.
Which of these phrases for inviting someone out or having to cancel plans feels the most natural to you? How can you use them to make your social life a little bit smoother?
Yeah, it's all about finding those phrases that really fit your personality and your way of interacting with people. Okay, so how about we travel to a new destination?
Yeah, let's go.
When you're in a new place, knowing how to ask for directions or information in a way that feels natural and appropriate can be really helpful. Our resources actually have some really good tips for how to avoid sounding like a lost tourist.
Oh, I'm all ears for this one.
It's amazing how a small change in phrasing can make a huge difference in how you're perceived, you know?
Yeah.
Instead of blurting out, "Where's the station?"
Right.
Try something like, "Could you point me in the right direction?"
Yeah, I like that. It's much softer, more polite. It kind of acknowledges that the person you're asking might be busy, and it frames your request as more of a need for guidance rather than just demanding information.
Exactly. It's about showing respect for the other person's time and knowledge. And if you're trying to figure out if something is within walking distance, instead of just asking how far it is, you could say, "Is this within walking distance?"
Yeah, that's a good one.
Again, it shows you're considering your options, not just expecting the other person to solve your problem for you.
Right.
You know, you're being proactive. And then for more general transportation questions, "What's the best way to get to?" is a really useful phrase that invites local knowledge and suggestions.
It's like you're tapping into their expertise.
Exactly. What's the locals' take on this? And then, of course, when you're at your hotel or navigating those transit hubs like airports, there are some handy phrases that can make things go more smoothly.
Okay, like what?
Well, at a hotel, instead of just asking for an early check-in, you could phrase it as, "Could I get an early check-in?" It's a small change, but it makes it more of a courteous inquiry.
Yeah, it's more polite. It shows you're not just assuming they'll accommodate your request.
Exactly. And if you're looking for some good local food recommendations, "Is there a good place to grab a bite nearby?" is always a winner.
It's so much better than just, where should I eat?
Right.
It's much more open-ended and inviting.
Exactly. And then there's the essential question for the modern traveler. What's the Wi-Fi situation here?
Oh, yeah, that's crucial.
It's casual, to the point, and pretty much universally understood these days.
Everyone needs Wi-Fi.
Exactly. So as we're thinking about these travel phrases, they're really all about being clear, respectful, and just making it easier to get the information you need while you're on the go.
They're like little linguistic tools for navigating a new environment.
Exactly. And so for those of you who love to travel, are there any times when knowing these phrases might have made things a bit simpler or your interactions a little more natural?
I think it's an interesting question to consider. Okay, so let's wrap things up with one final but really important area of communication.
Okay.
Those moments when things don't go quite as expected.
Oh, yeah. Those can be tough. They can be. But knowing how to address problems and express frustration in a polite and constructive way, in English or any language for that matter, is a valuable skill to have.
It really is.
Yeah.
And actually, the resources we're looking at today offer some really great alternatives to getting flustered or sounding aggressive when things go wrong.
Exactly. What we want to do is communicate the issue effectively without losing our cool, right?
Right.
So instead of just coming out and accusing someone, you might say, "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding."
Yeah, I like that. It's much less confrontational.
It is.
It's a way to kind of gently point out a potential error without putting anyone on the defensive.
Exactly. It opens the door for a constructive conversation rather than a heated argument. And if you think a mistake has been made, but you want to be sure, you can say, "Would you mind double-checking that for me?"
Would you mind? Such a great phrase.
It's a polite suggestion rather than directly accusing someone of being wrong.
It gives them the benefit of the doubt, right?
Right. Precisely. And if you need someone to actually take action to resolve a problem, you could try, "I'd really appreciate it if you could look into this."
It's more formal,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But it's also very polite and clearly indicates what you need.
Exactly. And then what about those times when you're really feeling frustrated, but you don't want to lose your temper? Our resources give us a couple of great phrases for that.
Yeah.
This is "getting a bit out of hand" is a good one. It's a way to communicate that a situation is becoming difficult to manage without resorting to anger.
It signals that you're reaching your limit, but you're still trying to maintain composure.
Exactly. And then there's I'm at my wit's end. This is a stronger way to express extreme frustration.
Yeah.
It kind of indicates that you've tried everything and you're just not sure what else to do.
It's definitely a phrase to use carefully, but it can be very effective in conveying just how serious the situation is.
For sure. And so, with these phrases for handling problems, what we're really aiming for is to communicate our concerns or frustrations in a way that's more likely to lead to a positive outcome. It's about staying calm, being clear, and focusing on solutions.
Absolutely. So, listeners, think back to a time when you faced a problem or a difficult situation. Do you think using one of these phrases might have changed the way the conversation unfolded? Could it have helped you stay calm and resolve the issue more effectively? I think it's something worth reflecting on. Okay, so we've covered a huge amount of ground today, looking at all sorts of advanced English phrases from greetings and small talk to workplace communications, social interactions, travel, and even handling those tricky moments when things go wrong.
Yeah, it's been quite the linguistic journey.
It has.
But I think the key takeaway here is that becoming comfortable with these kinds of phrases can really boost your confidence and help you sound much more natural when you're speaking English. It's about moving beyond basic vocabulary and really embracing some of the more nuanced expressions that native speakers use in their everyday conversations.
And it's about feeling empowered to express yourself more fully and authentically. So here's a little challenge for you listeners. Out of all the phrases we've talked about today, pick 3 that really resonate with you. 3 that you think would be particularly useful in your own life.
Yeah, the ones that you think you could realistically start using right away.
And make a conscious effort to use those phrases in your conversations today. It could be in an email you write, a text message you send, a phone call you make.
Or even just practicing them silently to yourself, getting comfortable with how they sound and feel in your mouth.
And then, after you've had a chance to try them out, take a moment to reflect on how those small changes impacted your interactions. Did you feel more confident? Did you notice a difference in how people responded to you?
And perhaps even more importantly, how did it make you feel about your own ability to communicate effectively in English? Did you feel a greater sense of ease or fluency?
I think those little self-assessments can be so valuable.
Absolutely. Okay, so to wrap things up, here's a final thought to ponder. Think about how mastering even just a few well-chosen phrases can significantly change how other people perceive your communication skills and your overall grasp of the nuances of the English language.
It's like you're sending a signal that you're paying attention to the subtle ways language is used.
Exactly.
What other seemingly small linguistic adjustments might be out there, waiting to be discovered, that could unlock even greater confidence and connection in your daily life? It's a fascinating question, and I think it's something worth exploring further on your own.
It's a journey of continuous learning and discovery, and it's one that can bring immense rewards.
So keep practicing, keep experimenting, and keep diving deep into the wonderful world of language. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into a fascinating topic. Until then, keep those